Hey, it's your boy, Pigs Eat People. I post very gory and explicit content, probably because my name incurs death, so no biggie. Um, well, let's just get right into it because I don't want to do anything. And let's just go in. Okay, we begin our story with a where we pan into a hospital, seeing Inko giving birth, until she starts screaming in pain because she's in birth. But then it starts getting a bit bloody, like curdling yells. And then her nose starts bleeding, and her mouth starts coughing out blood, and then she gives birth. Everyone just assumed they weren't really looking at her face, mostly the baby that was coming out. And she actually flops over into her bed. Well, the baby is born, with him having crocodile type skin and bumps over its head, and razor sharp claws and toes, and it coughs out the stuff the baby usually has in its throat or noses, and sneezes as well, getting it out, and it just sits there. Well, it also starts crying, of course. Starts crying, wondering where its mom is, until the doctors finally look up to see Inko dead, died of childbirth, died in childbirth. They definitely just. Then all the doctors had to face downwards to say, they all had to drop their hats. The nurse had to put the baby in the crib and fix its breathing so it could breathe normally. And then they all walk, do a ceremonial uh, thing the hospital does where they put a rose on Inko's body and then praise, and then Inko die, and then they wheel out Inko's body. Then a nice nurse starts caring for Izuku and then puts him while he's in the works of getting adopted or put in child care because she knows she can't take care of the baby, but she will help. She was being all nice to the baby, always celebrating when the baby does anything, basically, which is a good thing to do for a baby because they like and admire and enjoy coming from other people. Eventually, someone wants to adopt Deku because they heard that the kid was gonna uh, go through the adoption thing, and just thought, why don't adopt the kid? But as soon as they see the kid, instead of being happy to have a kid, the guy tries smothering Deku. Like he takes the baby's pillow and then puts it over Deku's face. But luckily for Deku, he chews right through it and spits in the guy's face with the cotton foam. Then a lot of doctors run in and then sedate the guy and then put him into a straitjacket and then shove him off into the police. Since he just tried to kill a child. That is when the doctors of that facility realize the kid is probably not going to be great in social areas. So they start panicking, and they try to keep the kid, but no one in the staff could keep a kid because they have this job. And so eventually, Deku just goes into the adoption system and has to deal with kids throwing rocks at him, spitting at him, throwing mud into his face, teasing him about his looks, trying to tear off his skin because they think it's fake and it's a costume. Eventually, Deku gets a bit violent and finally gets violent against one kid. It's a tubby kid, very fat. He's a he's just telling Deku to go, you know, off himself, telling him that his mom probably died during childbirth, and saying that until Deku turns to him, the kid looks at his stomach, then sees his organs are spilling out, and then Deku looks at looks at another person, then the other person looks at the kid and seeing his throat, the fat kid's throat slit, and then he grabs between the inside the fat kid's stomach and tears him in half. Obviously, people try to get Deku. One guy just straight up tries to shoot him, but of course it just reflects off Deku's skin and shooting through the guy's skull, killing him. And Deku took 2 lives that day, just two. Injured a lot of people, but didn't kill them. Just the fat kid, because the fat kid was being an ass to him his entire life being here. The fat kid was adopted multiple times, but was brought back and tortured Deku even more because he couldn't get adopted because of his behavior and just assumed the reason they didn't want him as a child was because he was exposed to Deku, even though no, he just was an asshole. And well, the kid got his just deserves. And then Deku just then they try to bring Deku into custody, like they chain him up like a freaking animal and drag him instead of freaking pushing him. They drag him. And while they're dragging him to the police car, he then stops trying to resist the chains, and they feel a bit more confident, thinking that Deku gave up. But little do they know, he did nothing but not give up. So he gets in the car. 2 police officers get in, and they start driving off. And then they hear shackle noise. It's shaking. And they turn around to see Deku is out of the vehicle. And then the driver turns to the passenger, seeing the passenger's throat bleeding out and squirting all over the place, getting to the driver's eye. Then the driver has to wipe his face off. Then he loses control of the vehicle, and then crashes into an area. Then the guy crawls out of the vehicle with a paralyzed back, and then Deku appears in front of him. The guy looks up, and then Deku fucking football kicks his head off, and then he runs away. And then we see Deku sprinting, and then we see him trip, fall into the sewers, and they get freaking drained out into the sewers. And then we see Deku wash up on some concrete. Gets up, crawls over. He crawls over a couple of rats, crushes them, eats them in the process, and then he just gets up eventually. And then we see him find a hobo. Then he crushes the hobo's head with his hand, just putting it on his face gently, and then quickly stomping it out. And then he threw the guy against the wall, and then took his clothes. And he did tear off some bits so he could at least fit in it. Except for the pants, he just rolled those up. Eventually, we cut to 10 years later. 10 years later. Not 10 years. Let's say about. Okay, let's say about Man About with Man. 18 years, and then Deku's 14, of course. And at this time, Deku's consuming a lot of people because he got the taste of human flesh after X by biting into the guy's jugular, and then finally got the taste of blood. So now he wants to eat more and more, and eventually he goes back out on the streets. He's not covered in blood or anything. He actually has way more ragged. He has no shirt on, actually. He just has his skin showing, and then the exact same pants, just unrolled and perfectly his size for some reason. Well, except for the couple bits of it where it's torn, mostly around the leg area and the upper hip. And then Deku just starts walking around. Some guy throws a drink at Deku, but Deku catches it in his hand gently and then starts drinking from it. And weirdly, the guy threw a fully filled cup out of a window. Like, dude, that's just wastefulness. But Deku's less wasteful, so he throws it in the trash instead of throwing it out of a freaking window. By the way, he drank all of it really quickly. And people start being scared and yelling, villain, villain. Deku doesn't care. He's just walking because he's really know what else to do. He's just gonna walk and walk and walk until a hero. I don't really want to say the hero name because I really don't know the hero names, and just a random hero who has the power to throw bottles at people. But these aren't any old bottles. These bottles are filled with alcohol. But the only reason he has his quirk is precision. Like, he can throw them really well. That's the only reason. But the only thing he can throw are bottles. Like, he can't throw anything else. Just bottles. Precisely. You give him a pebble, he cannot. But you give him a bottle, he can throw it like a master tomahawk thrower. But it's kind of useless still. So the guy pulls up on Deku, then throws a bottle at him without even talking to the guy, and then throws a Molotov this time, and hitting Deku on the back, setting him on fire. The guy thinks he's just gonna stop. The guy's gonna just start freaking out, but Deku just stands there, turns around, and then grabs the guy in the middle and tears him in half. And then everyone just screams in fear, cause it's not every day when you see a guy get torn up the middle. Like, think Shao Kahn's Mortal Kombat 9 execution, where he just reaches into you and just tears you in half. Like that. He did it like that, and then he just straight up goes on a massacre after that. He just murders anyone who gets close to him, or if he gets close to. So basically, then he starts consuming people, which scares a lot of people, and they call it even more heroes. Those are basically like fodder heroes, so Deku just dispatches them quickly. One guy, he tears his jaw off and freaking shoves it into the guy's head. Yeah, Deku just goes on a killing spree until finally an upper class hero shows up. Yeah, it's President Mike. Well, it's President Mike and um, President Mike and Gunhead, because he has good combat skills, and he has guns, and they team up on Deku, actually doing some doing some minor damage on Deku, mostly making his eardrums bleed, or or just shooting him with stronger bullets than which is regular to Gunhead has stronger bullets than what is regular, so they can actually pierce Deku. But Deku is able to usually dodge all the bullets and get Gunhead, not killing him, just severely beating. Like, he just gets some freaking wombo combos off of Gunhead, eventually hitting him with a headshot that just shatters his entire mask, knocking him straight out. And President Mike then gets a bit scared because he wasn't the stronger of the two physically, and definitely Deku is definitely a brawler, which President Mike is a guy who has to stay away. or he'll probably get just destroyed. So Deku then starts beating up onto Present Mike. That is until Mirako shows up and freaking one kits Deku, making him fly away. Deku blocked it though, tearing up the concrete, and then Mirako and Deku got into a fight. Mirako then starts yelling at Deku that he could have chose a better path than becoming a villain, until Deku actually speaks, which surprises a lot of people because they just thought Deku was a mindless villain. And Deku just speaks, "You haven't gone through what I have." And then just completely levels Mirako's stomach, like freaking makes an indent. You know how Frieza got his freaking stomach indented by Topo? Like that. Not killing her, by the way. Just some pain. And then just completely. And then she goes flying into a car, knocking her out. Knocked out two very high class heroes at the time. Obviously, Mirako isn't as strong as she was when she fought Shigaraki. Not fought the high and Nomus, but Deku could definitely fight a Nomu, though. If you're, not now, but he could definitely do it. Okay, so Prism Mike then yells at Deku even louder than possible, almost like tearing out his voice box, basically. That's how loud he's speaking, and then it just blows Deku backwards into hmm, into All Might. Yeah, it's All Might. All Might showed up finally after a couple of, after a lot of hero casualties and villain casualties. And then All Might cleans up Deku really quickly, just pimp slapping him again, hitting him with a Detroit Smash, and then knocking Deku completely out. Which All Might does commend Deku for surviving 3 punches from him. Well, 2, 1 backhand, 1 slap, and 1 punch. 1 name punch, by the way. So, props for you, Deku. Props for you, Deku. But, that's where I'm going to leave things for right now. Like, subscribe, hit the post notification bell. Those all help me reach my goal of 50 subs. And if we get that, I will post a 50 sub special. See y'all. Have a good day. You are the best. Remember that.